extension of various executive orders, including 20-25 dated April 15, 2020. The Cumberland School Committee intends to conduct this meeting remotely. The public can participate in this meeting remotely, but not in person, by calling 312-626-6799, webinar ID 911-3076-1085, or join at the HTTP address listed on our posted agenda, which can also be found on our district website on the event calendar. The password's 921122. Hello, Mr. Mitchell. Welcome. Mr. Collins. Heidi. Call to order. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, which again is in compliance with the governor's executive orders. Do I have pleasure of the committee? Mrs. Bernardo makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. DeMonica. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 3-0. Thank you. We're going to move around the agenda. I'm going to do the approval of the minutes, and then we're going to skip to number 8 with the town finance director. I know he's under a tight time restraint for some other meetings. So next item on the agenda, number 3, approval of the minutes, which have been uploaded to our drives. I sent them to Cindy Shabbatz. Minutes for 5/14/2020 and minutes for 5/28/2020. Pleasure of the committee.
Motion to approve.
Mrs.
Second.
Bernardo makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. DeMonica. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it, 3-0. So like I said, we're going to skip over to number 8. We're okay doing that, Mr. Adams? Thumbs up. Excellent. Discussion with Town Finance Director regarding health care changes. I don't know, Mr. Mitchell or Mr. Prignano want to take the introduction on this and then pass it over to Mr. Chauvin?
Well,
Welcome,
yeah,
by the way, Mr. Chauvin.
Does everyone have the document that Cindy Shabbat loaded? Town, it says Town and School Department joining WB Community Health Group. It's a one-page document.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to work off that. And then what I'm going to do is I finish each little section here. I'm going to ask the finance director to elaborate or if he wants to add anything. Since
Thank you.
this was really, a town initiative going out to bid with their healthcare consultant, Rob Khaleesi, who we also use, but he was really hired by the town. And what they did is they put not who gives us discounts and manages our claims as far as what we pay and for, cost of services, but really it was the person was going out to bid for the organization that handles our admin and stop loss insurance and those administrative functions. So basically just called RIMIC, and a number of different school departments and towns belong to it. And this this came about because actually what Blue Cross used to do, they used to charge administrative fees based on your size. So someone like the state of Rhode Island would have the lowest admin fee. The city of Providence, where I worked, our fee was a little bit higher than the states. And I used to fight all the time when I was there about, why wouldn't our rate be at least equal to the, size shouldn't really matter when it comes to the administrative fee piece of it. And then when I came to Cumberland, Cumberland's fee was at if the state was like 20-something dollars, Cumberland's fee was like over $100 per person per month. So we went out to bid at that time, and we had United Health and Blue Cross both bidding against each other, and we ended up deciding to stay with Blue Cross, but they rolled the administrative rate down into the $60 range, and admitted that they had been probably charging us too much over the last few years. And they gave the district, the town and the district some $400,000 in rebates for the, some of the overcharges that they felt occurred over the previous years. Mayor McKee at the time, because the school department, it had been a school department initiative, and most of the money was ours anyhow, but he allowed us to keep all of the money, which was decent of him at the time. And that's kind of was almost the seed money that we set up. As everyone knows, we have that $450,000 reserve on our books for healthcare claims. It kind of came from that time period where we got the rebates and stuff from Blue Cross. Now, what Mayor McKee did shortly after that was he formed this group with other mayors where they got together and formed this group of RIMIC, which gave us the numbers that equals a place like Providence. And we were able to reduce the rate from where we were in the 60s at the time down into the 20s today. And that was a great idea that the mayor had, and he got the mayor of North Providence and Johnston and others to join in on that action. And that group that's still in place today. So we belong to RIMIC right now. And what RIMIC really does, that was only really put together to grow the size of the numbers to get that admin fee. Everyone kind of still handles everything on their own as far as paying claims, going out for their own stop loss, those type of things. It was just to really almost create this umbrella of towns and districts to get the numbers where we could get down to a low admin fee. So it currently works where, depending on our claim activity, we either have a shortfall or a surplus in our budget each year. There's no working rate that RIMIC comes up with. There's none of that sort of stuff. And we pay the administrative, we pay an administrative fee and stop loss plan on our own. The admin fee is negotiated by RIMIC, and the stop loss we go out to bid on our own. Some districts probably carry 200,000, some 250. You can carry what you want. We have a $250,000 plan fund. So that's what we do now. What the town has done, they've gone out to bid, and they got bids in, and they awarded it. The town council, I believe, last week awarded it to WB Community Healthcare Group. And what that is, it's kind of a hybrid plan. They actually set a working rate that you pay into them each month, just like if you were with Blue Cross, so they gave you a working rate. So you pay in a fixed working rate each month. So you lose some flexibility there, because right now, Rob Khaleesi might tell me, gee, we need $8 million for next year for healthcare claims. And we gamble a little bit. We budget 7.5 and hope we have a good year. And then we chase the claims each year. And, you can see some years we've had some good years. The last couple of years, we've overspent the claims. So anyhow, it kind of works like a premium arrangement. However, where it's different is, if you have a good year, that money's yours, and you start to build up a reserve against healthcare in that account, which can be used in future years to either reduce your working rate, or you could actually take it in to spend it on some other need, that was appropriate if there was a need to. So in that way, it is self-insured, because you get to keep the money if you build up a reserve. If you have a shortfall, you don't have a shortfall in the current operating year. What happens is that shortfall is made up in the next year's working rates. So if we overspent our healthcare, we're going to spend in a set rate this year that's going to generate about $8.6 million in claims and admin fee. If it comes in 8.9 next year, WB Community will adjust our working rate to make that $300,000 shortfall up, and then whatever the working rate would need to be for next year. So I think I touched a little bit on that. The annual working rate was raised, must be budget. Right, that kind of completes the second bullet, Ray. Anything you wanted to add to where we are so far?
No, I think you did a good job. I guess I would add to that. Somebody might have the question, what size is WB versus RIMIC? They're around the same size. They each have about 15, 16, 17 communities and school groups. So about the same size. And another way to say what you were saying, Alex, is we have the benefits of being self-insured, but this behaves like a fully insured plan in terms of cash flow, budget certainty, and accounting, much easier accounting wise. So it's got a lot of positives in that way. I'll let you continue.
Mr. Mitchell, do you have a question?
Yeah, just I don't know that it's really a question, but I guess it is. Alex, and forgive me if I'm repeating something that you've already stated, but one of the advantages, and Ray, please if I'm inaccurate here, but probably the biggest advantage here is that everything is, like, for example, there's been some concerns that, we haven't been totally transparent with the total of healthcare claims, or that we haven't been transparent in the fact that healthcare claims may not have been as much as we budgeted for. This takes all of that suspicion, if you will, out of the conversation. Is that accurate, Alex?
Well, you're still gonna have the same, the same audit GASB requirements where they're gonna take working rates that are paid in, co-pays that are paid in by employees and reduce claims, and that the audit will appear the same. It's not that we haven't been transparent, it's that, the accounting rules, people, and I don't expect people to understand the accounting rules. We budget $8 million for healthcare claims, and it shows up 7 million in the audit because they took the $1 million of co-pays, zero that out on the revenue side, and reduced claims by $1 million. So just look at the claims, you'd say, wow, they spent $1 million less. No, that's not really what happens, but so I don't know if that will eliminate that or not, Bob.
Well, I guess I'm not saying that we haven't been transparent, because we've been transparent and honest. I'm just, all I'm suggesting is that this process, and what I'm hearing is that may not be so, it would take the suspicion, out of the process. That's all I'm saying, because we have been transparent and honest. I just, that was the point I wanted to make.
Mr.
Yeah.
Prignano,
That's right.
what is, or Mr. Chauvin, what is the school savings? What are we going to save by us implementing this? And then also, second part, do we need to vote on this in our full school committee meeting?
Okay, I can take that. Alex, you correct me if I'm wrong. There's no vote needed. That was voted at the town council level, and this is being implemented.
Okay,
So no vote necessary. Your question was, what are we saving, right?
the schools, on
So-
the school side.
Right.
Yeah, so the school is 70% roughly of the total volume. We do about $12 million in this whole spend. And
So 70% of the total town's healthcare, 70% of it is the schools.
that's correct. That's correct.
Okay,
So this couldn't have been done at a better time, I think, because the school experience was not so good. I mean, you have ups and downs when you're self-insured, and this was a kind of a down year in terms of experience. So you're probably looking at a rate increase of around 11%. And it turned into, as a result of the savings that we achieved here, which is in excess of 500,000, it turned into a 6% increase. So I believe your total would have been around 9 million as projected by Alex originally. And it ended up being around 8.6 million. So the lion's share, as it should,
right.
of savings goes to the school.
okay, so Ray, Mr. Chauvin, let me
yeah.
just understand this. So this current plan is 6% higher than last year, but we're having a savings from, it would be 9 million, instead it's going to cost us, or cost everyone total 8.6 million, correct?
Yeah, so it was going to cost 9 million, and
Okay.
roughly we saved 500,000. So
Okay.
you take 70% of that, I'm going to round it up to 400,000. I think it was a little more than 500,000, 550,000. So your 9 million original projection based on experience actually comes down to 8.6 when you apply the savings. So you still have a rate increase because the claims are the claims. You've heard that expression probably before.
I have.
Claims are always the claims, whether they're with RIMIC, the trust, or WB. They're the claims, they're administered by Blue Cross, and they are what they are. So the only difference in the cost is the other components that get added on top of the claims. And we're going to review that, I believe.
Mr. Chauvin, I do have another question.
Yeah.
This passed with the town council a 4-3 vote.
Yeah.
I noticed one of the councilors, Councilor Schmidt, voted against this. and it has a savings, actually, I'm not sure why 3 councils voted against it with a savings of 500,000 to the schools. Do you, I'm just curious if you have any input as to what their concerns were. I have not reached out to them.
To me, that would all be speculation on my part.
Okay.
So, you know, if you
Fair
want to
enough.
speculate with me, I'll
No,
have a
I'd
private
rather you not,
conversation.
I'd rather you not speculate. Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
know
Ray,
you
let
can't
me
speak on them.
let me finish going through this, and then maybe some of the questions will be answered, then we can
Okay.
go through them. So, and just in,
Can I
think it's
just go back
important
for
for the
one,
committee
can
to.
I go back 1 second and just
Yes, go ahead,
try
Mr.
to
Sherman.
answer what you just said? I think the council, this is a very complicated area if you get into the, you know, the weeds. And so I really think that this probably would have passed 7-0 if
Mhm.
they had a little bit more time. But we kind of ran out of time. And so there were still questions remaining to be answered. And I even wrote to one of the members that voted against, and I said, you know, given more time, I think you would have come around and voted for it because you didn't have all your questions answered. So
Okay,
I think that's the best
fair
answer I
enough.
can give you.
So
All right,
now,
Mr. Pignano.
yeah, I just want to point out that this does reduce some flexibility that we have. There have been years where we came up with, like, for example, Mr. Khaleesi came up with a projected $9 million healthcare claim number for us this year. We were budgeting 8.4 and going to gamble that our cases would be better, because to budget the 9 million would have meant $600,000 more reductions in the school department. And that's part of the reason why over the years we chase healthcare and we fight like heck on everything else in the budget to try to make up that shortfall. You won't have that opportunity to do it. Day one, when they set the working rate, you know what you got to pay in. If it comes out 8.6, you got to budget 8.6, because there's no opportunity to have a better year. The number's the number for the year, right?
Alex, can I add to this? You know, you talk about you lose flexibility maybe in year 1, but the
Right.
idea here is this is supposed to develop over time reserves, cash reserves that are held at WB. It's just a different way of doing the same thing, self-insured. And over time, and I talked to, you know, in my due diligence, I talked to many members, and it seems like, you know, around 90% of the people have developed the reserves. And it takes 2 to 3 years probably to develop these reserves. And the positive from the town standpoint and from the school standpoint, in my opinion, is that eventually when the reserves show up at the WB, and those are cash reserve, those are our reserves, and they're healthcare reserves, when they show up, you'll be able to take any reserves that you might have on your books and get rid of them, you know, use them for something else. And if we develop excess reserves, you know, fingers crossed, then you could take monies back. You know, there are GFOA guidance on this, and you know what you could take back, what you shouldn't take back. Should have minimum reserves, but once you get past the minimum, and some communities have already faced this, and they get to take the reserves back that are excess.
No,
Okay.
and that's true. But the point I was making is there'll be a set working rate. There'll be no opportunity to budget less than that working rate is, and hope that you have a good year. And then you know, we'll talk a little bit about how these savings that Ray's talking about are going to come about. I think I mentioned a few minutes ago that we're paying about $76 per person for stop loss. What WB does is they gamble on their stop loss. Instead of a $250,000 policy, the policy's a higher number, and because they're able to self-insure some of those shock claims, because they've got all this money being paid into them from in working rates, in sort of premiums that pay the claims. So they calculate with a higher shock, you know, is stop loss insurance rate of 500,000. That number is going to be probably, what's it, Ray? $48.
It's
gonna be-
$48 versus
Yeah, it's
76.
going to be
$48.53.
$48 rather than the $78 that we're paying now. So that's a good portion where the savings come from. And then they handle prescription rebates differently. I don't know if you want to highlight on that, Ray?
Let's stop let's just talk about that $48 too. I mean, you use the word gamble. It's not really, I don't consider it a gamble. It's, they're taking an insurance aspect of, what's being done now. We're buying, we're paying for the full insurance at Blue Cross. They're taking what they call a mezzanine level, the difference between 250 and 500. They're self-insuring that mezzanine level. There's a lot of profit in there, and they're siphoning off that profit to our benefit. And we're joining an organization that has some reserves right off the bat for that particular mezzanine level, because I looked at the financial statements. That's, it's a fairly new thing that they're doing, but they have sufficient quantity of members to be able to do that on a self-insured basis. And that derives some of the savings in that area. So we want to move on to prescription.
Yes,
Alex?
please.
Yeah,
Okay. So in the prescription area, this is really, if you don't mind, I can share my screen.
I think we have it in front of us, Mr. Chauvin.
Do you have the,
Fiscal committee members, do you have it? Are you talking about the pharmacy rebate calcs?
yeah, the cost calculations,
just the
I think you
cost
might have them.
calculations is all I was, if you have that in front of you, everybody has it in front of you.
Right.
Mrs.
see that
Bernardo,
the-
Mr. DeMonica? Yep, go ahead, Mr. Chauvin.
So nobody needs to see it. Okay.
You do not.
Okay, so you have the administrative fee, $20.31 is REMIC. WBC is $45. That's sort of like the list price. So REMIC looks like it's cheaper there. Well, REMIC's number is net of whatever negotiated pharmacy rebate that they got. So the administrative fee minus the pharmacy rebate at the REMIC side is $20.31 per employee per month.
Actually, Mr. Chauvin, that is not the chart that I have in front of me.
I could share the screen. It takes 2
Do you
seconds.
have this one, Mrs. Bernardo? You have it? Oh, okay, go ahead, Mr. Chauvin, please.
It's at the very bottom of that sheet, Ray. Can you scroll all the way down?
Yeah, it's there, Ray.
Do you see it? Do you see my
Yeah,
screen?
Yep, there it is.
Okay.
Oh, you
Yep,
know what it is?
that's what they have.
I apologize. On my split screen, it's not allowing me. I had to minimize. Okay, I got it.
So it kind of doesn't matter. I'll just
I
show
got
it
it.
here. So you got this 20, 30, 31 versus the $45. So it looks like REMIC is cheaper, and they are just looking at that line. Skip the stop loss for a second. Go right to the pharmacy rebates, which is right here. The pharmacy rebates on the REMIC side is netted in that $20.31. So 45 minus whatever that is $20.31. That's the net number we pay for REMIC. WBC, again, we start at 45 list price. We actually get in rebates based on our specific usage, $65.05 in rebates. So it actually more than covers the list price administrative, and we actually make $20 on that line. That net administrative fee is a $40 swing. We make $20 on that line. That is real. That's the thing I didn't believe when I first looked at this, and I did a lot of research and checking around, and that's real. So that's part of it. And then we already went over the stop loss.
Gotcha.
That's real too. So when you look at the two and you add them together, we're saving $554,000 because it cost on the REMIC side for those expenses, $787,000, and on the WB side, it cost $232,000. So $554,000 savings. And we could get into the pharmacy rebate calculation. It doesn't really matter because the 6505 can vary a little bit depending on the mix of the prescription drugs that are used. But each drug has a schedule, and if you use that drug, then they get a very specific guarantee of a rebate on that drug. And, we have lots of instances of use of different prescription drugs. And the mix really doesn't vary from group to group very much, is what I'm told. So that 65 is pretty assured.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
And if committee members, anyone
So-
question? Mr.
Well, we're
DeMonica?
still,
just
let me
unmute.
just add a couple other points, Ray.
Yep.
Okay, all right, Mr. Pregnano.
Also, I think it's important, to mention that the plan goes with WB. The plan is improved from a $2 million maximum cap per person to unlimited. I think that's very important. I think that's a big bonus. And
Yes,
then
absolutely.
lastly, how is this going to affect the school budget? Well, we're going to have to pay now a high number of $8.6 million for claims and admin fees to WB. If you take our claims number, it's 7.7 in the budget. You add the admin number, it's another 700,000. We have 8.4. So we're a couple $100,000 short. Also, which isn't that big a deal because we still have our $450,000 reserve, which I don't know if we really need a reserve now. That reserve was more or less to protect us again in a current budget year where claims were so costly
Okay.
that it put us into a deficit. That won't happen now. Claims,
Yes.
you shouldn't once you start budgeting this correctly, you'll know what you pay, and there won't be any plus or minus in your general fund budget.
Alex,
That will happen at the WB community side where you'll either be building up the reserves or having a shortfall that you have to make up the following year.
Alex,
The
Alex,
but
can I
I'm sorry,
jump
Mr.
in?
so that's on the
Pregnano,
expense
Mr.
side, but we
Chauvin?
still have the 400,000.
Well, hold on, Mr. Pregnano. Mr. Chauvin, did you want to say something to Alex's point?
Yes.
Okay,
On the reserves, you can't put the reserves in the bank. They take 2 years to accumulate. So I
Right.
mean, you might be able to reduce your reserves at school level and us at the town, but you can't eliminate them, in my opinion. I don't think the auditor would allow that anyway, but
I'm talking about reducing that 450 this year to make up between the 8.4 and the 8.6 if the school
Oh, yeah,
committee was
yeah.
concerned,
oh, yeah, okay.
having a $200,000 shortfall.
No, I don't disagree with you.
That's
Okay.
that's what I'm talking about, right?
Gotcha. Yep.
And then on the other side of the budget, as you recall, we had a handshake with the mayor where he would put $400,000 towards our healthcare claims if we were going to overspend them. Well, we won't overspend them, the claims this year, but we still have that $400,000 revenue on our side of the budget coming from the town. That now will be needed because there's no opportunity to have a better year than 8.6. And we already know that we have 8.4. We're going to have to get to 8.6. So we can't get to 8.2 where we wouldn't need that. However, I would expect, though, let's say we were virtual next year. We didn't have busing costs again or that type of stuff. And we ran a surplus for whatever reason. I would think that if we ran a surplus and didn't need the 400,000, and that would be obviously the committee's decision, we wouldn't take it because I know the town's trying to build their reserve back to where it was. This was a hedge against us in healthcare that that the town had some opportunity if we had a good year not to have to come up with that. I would still think if we ran a surplus that, we wouldn't really need that $400,000, but that will be I just think that would be fair. If we're trying to, also make sure the town is able to have a strong financial position so they can help us in the budget in the future. So
Right.
there's, I guess we still need the $400,000 as of this point. And I don't know now, Ray, if you have any questions on now that you know how it affects us and how it works a little bit, if there are any other questions.
All right, Mr. DeMonica has a question.
So Alex, what is the current working rate for the teachers that we have right now, and will it be as of July 1st? Do we know that number yet?
Yeah, it's currently the family plan. I don't have it memorized. It's about $158
Compared to
per
what?
paycheck. The 20% copay for a family plan, and I believe it's going to go up about $9 or so. It'll be around 168, 169, and that's reflected in our budget. If you look at the co-payments coming in, they went from $1.5 million change to $1.680 next year, and that's already in our budget as a budgeted revenue. So we're expecting that type of increase anyhow.
And that number has been, WB is okay with that number?
Well, that number is going to be 20%. I think it's 167. It's 20% of what their working rate will be. That's what I think what Bob and people will get into a little bit, they'll be paying 20% of that rate. They'll be able to see what that rate is.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions?
But it'll be a
Mr. Fiorello?
slight increase.
Hi, I came a couple minutes late, so I'm kind of confused about a couple things. Are we still, has the healthcare at all changed, or are we still with the Blue Cross?
Hasn't
And the
changed.
manager-
No,
one bit.
yeah, the healthcare hasn't changed.
Not one bit.
Blue Cross is still the one paying, the doctors, the hospitals, their discounts for services and that type of stuff. It's the admin piece of it, the stop loss and how we handle prescription rebates and actually how we pay for this. It's, I don't know if you heard about, what we were talking about. It's like a hybrid plan. You have like a working rate that you pay it just like a premium arrangement every month. But
Right,
you
I
build
do
up
have a question
reserves.
though. It sounds like the town made a vote and bound us to this deal with WB. Is that correct?
We bond
is
you to
correct.
$500,000 of savings, yes.
It was,
Well, I'm not concerned about the
Remick.
savings. What I'm concerned about is how is the town council dictating what we do with our budget?
Why, that's for you guys to debate.
And that's what I'm doing.
Okay,
I'm just asking, maybe Steve Adams or Mrs. Duncanson can weigh in on this. The charter is pretty clear about the separation. We should have been part of the conversation so that we could have, agreed to this before the fact instead of just being told that this is what's happening.
I mean, as finance chair, I can reach out to the mayor or maybe Mr. DeMonica could reach out to the mayor.
Well,
And we
Mark,
can get some
in
answers.
the health care plan is really the town's plan. We're a
It
part of the
always
town's
has,
plan.
it always has been part of the town's plan for the period of time that I think I've been here. I'm not disagreeing with you, Mr. Fiorello, in the sense that, the responsibility of the school committee, but as a practical matter, I do believe that the plan has always been a town plan.
So I'm confused because when there was the talk about the plan that the town went with a couple of years ago. I'm sorry, I can't think what the name of it is.
HSA.
Yes, thank you. The HSA, there was a lot of pressure on us to offer to the teachers and we decided it wasn't in our best interest. How is that different than what this is what's happening here? If it's still the town plan,
no,
because that's what the
difference
town
at
is
all.
doing, isn't it?
Nothing changes. We're still with Blue Cross. The only thing that changed is we negotiated 4 separate fees, and they were lower at WBCH versus Remick. That's it. Same plan, Blue Cross. It just
Same
switched
options?
to a different,
Yeah.
kind of a different third-party administrator. That's it.
As I understand it, this is Steve again. The plan, what they're saying is the plan itself is the same. There has been no change in the plan.
It's
And
just the
which actually
administration.
is not necessarily even in the agreement. I think in terms of the CBAs, although I don't want to overstep myself because I
That was
haven't
my
looked at the
next question.
CBAs. I don't think that they require, Alex and Katie may have this
Hmm.
more at hand, but I remember looking at this some time ago when there was some controversy about the plan, which wasn't changing then, although there was a period of time when it did. But if the plan isn't changing, there's no implication to the teachers or to the staff of any kind because it's the same plan. It's
And
identical.
one additional bit of evidence is nobody's Blue Cross card is changing. So everything
Okay.
stays the same.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? All right, Mr. Chauvin, anything else to add? Mr. Prignano, Mr. Mitchell? Mrs.
No, I just
Duncanson,
thought
anything?
I just thought it important since it was gonna, it impacts how we're, maybe some adjustments we'll be making in our budget, increasing that number to 8.6 and other things that Ray came down and helped me explain it to the school committee, just what, how it'll affect us. So,
Okay, due to time restraints, we're gonna keep this running. All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
Ray, thanks for your help.
Okay,
Thanks, Ray. Thank you, Ray.
okay, bye-bye now.
Next item on the agenda, payment, I apologize, payment of bills. Mr. DeMonica, I don't know what that noise is. You have some questions in your payment of bills? Mr. DeMonica, just unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, there we go. Alex, on page 3 of the bills, we have Bayetta Home Health Care that we're continuing to pay invoices, and it says here nurse for preschool student from March 23rd to March 26th. There's about 5 to 7 invoices here for nurses. I mean, schools are closed, so what are these preschool nurses, this company providing to preschool students?
I asked that same question, and the special ed director felt the bill is legitimate, and that we're still educating that child, and the nurse was in place to help that child with what's going on with virtual learning and whatever. I'm sure Rachel's probably not on right now, but I'm sure she can clear that up for you. But I asked the same question. I was wondering if the same thing.
But we got like 7 other nurses that we were trying to lay off. You're telling me that those other 7 nurses are busy in the school district, that we have to actually continue to pay an outside vendor? All right, well, I'm gonna vote, when the time comes, I'm gonna vote to hold that payment back until we get an explanation.
That's fine.
On
Mr.
page
DeMonica? Okay, go ahead.
On page 13 of the payment of bills, we still have mentoring services by Mrs. Bagassani. Do you know what that's about yet? I mean, who are we mentoring right now?
I don't know, maybe Bob or Tony. I don't know if Tony's on, can that Mrs. Bazignani does that for them. I'm not exactly positive exactly what the services she provides. I know has to do with mentoring, first year teachers and stuff, but I don't know exactly what she does.
Right,
Mr.
all right,
All right,
Go ahead.
we'll follow up on that, Mr. DeMonica.
all right. My other question was on page 6. We have continued district-wide clinical consultant by Dr. Ozwecki. I mean, I'm not sure what we're doing.
Well, Mr. DeMonica, I do know that Dr. Ozwicki has been involved still with helping students with mental health issues. As you can imagine, there has been an increase in the level of stress and anxiety due to coronavirus. And I know I've actually talked to her a couple of times myself, not for the personal mental health issues that I'm dealing with, but we've had some conversations about some of the support that she's providing. She also checks in with adults, but we can certainly follow up on that. I'm convinced that Dr. Ozwicki is still actively involved in supporting students with mental health issues.
Then I just had 2 more. One was on page 21. The Providence Public Library. It says here employee classes at BSL employee classes.
Right, that's coming from the ELL money that we get. We got some $20-something thousand for ELL, and what I believe Mrs. Ionetta was doing, I believe that's training teachers that we currently have to be certified in ELL, so that we have more flexibility in the classrooms and stuff when children enroll in Cumberland that have ELL, issues. So
Right.
what she's doing is she's trying to build build up additional ELL teachers in the district. And that's
Right,
being
and
paid for by that restricted money for ELL purposes.
Mr. Mitchell,
And
did you
then-
want to add to that? A
No,
response?
I do think it's important to note that, and again, we'll definitely provide more information, but I do think it's important for everyone to know that we have students on IEPs that still require services, and those services are being provided, and many times it is from someone like a Dr. Oswicki and others. So your questions are good ones, Mr. DeMonica. We'll follow up, but I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Mr. DeMonica, you have one more question, then Mr. Fiorillo.
Yeah, just one more on page 24. We
Page
have an
24.
invoice for almost $34,000 to Therapy Works from April 20th to May 21st.
Oh,
I just had a question of what they're doing. Are they going to people's homes? What are they doing to provide occupational services?
If I may, Mr. Salvatore,
Yes,
and
Mr.
again,
Mitchell.
I'm not real comfortable providing, a response with great accuracy. But again, I think any occupational therapy is included in a student's IEP. And I know that those services need to continue to be required, but we'll follow up. Good questions, Mr. DeMonica.
And
Thank
we're
you, Mr.
continuing,
Mitchell.
not only, that's the occupational therapy, but we're also still paying the physical therapists and stuff. So these services are still being provided, whether they're virtual or whatever, they're still being provided.
Okay, Mr. Fiorillo.
I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Mitchell had said, that even though we're on virtual learning, a child's IEP still dictates what services they're providing, whether it's OT, speech therapy, check-ins with psychologists or psychiatrists. In some cases, medically fragile children are getting checkups probably virtually with the nurses that are more hands-on than, say, our school nurses would be. But I would welcome Dr. Santa's input, of course. But I know that this has been an
agree.
issue throughout the state.
Thank you. Mr. Prognatos, I did notice a lot of refunds from school bucks. This is normal every year?
Well, this is for people who had money left in their food service account when the year ended. March 13th, these people
Okay.
were no longer buying lunches from the school, and so they asked for their money to be refunded, which it's their money.
Mrs. Bernato, just unmute.
Yeah, thank you. And just the preschool tuition refunds, again, just curious
What
about that.
page, Mrs. Bernato?
Sorry, I don't have the page. I
They're
wasn't,
all over the
Okay.
register.
yeah, I just was curious just about the preschool tuition refund, just as to, why that happens. And then the lifespan school tuitions. I can breeze through to find out what page that's on, but.
That's on page 15 is a lifespan school tuitions. They're like 6,000 a whack, Mr. Prognato. There's like 6 of them.
Those, off the top of my head, I don't recall, and I'll have to check them. The preschool tuitions are people whose child, their child won't be going back to the preschool next year. People who's going back next year, they pretty much kept their money and, they have a credit towards next year's bill. But people who would be going on into kindergarten or whatever that, wouldn't be going to the preschool anymore, we refunded their share of money that they had paid for March, April, however far in advance they had paid.
Mr. Mitchell, do you have any input? I'm just curious on the lifespan school solutions.
You know what? I'm sorry. I don't, Mr. Salvatore.
Could
Okay.
that be, this is
We'll have to
Mr.
check.
Adams, could that be the Bradley School? Which
I
is a
think it
Oh,
may
the
be.
lifespan.
I think it may be, but
organization.
yeah.
I don't know. I haven't looked at that. I don't have this in front of me, so.
Yeah.
But
I mean, some of them,
Bradley is part of
some of them do say tuition,
Yeah,
tuition. So.
Yeah, it's gonna be, it's tuitions, and we're continuing to pay all out of district tuitions. I don't recall exactly, exactly the services being provided and, for the $6,000, but they're tuitions, and we're continuing to pay all our tuitions. Matter of fact, the governor, I think, required it that even though these out of placement centers were providing virtual services that you would think wouldn't quite be as hands-on as when a student is actually there, we would have continued to pay them. And what's supposedly, if the student needs follow-up services afterwards, these locations will have to provide it at no cost.
Gotcha. All right. Anyone else? So pleasure of the committee, the payment of bills total is $1,484,723.27. Looking for a motion? Mrs. Bernardo?
Well, I make a motion to approve.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second by Mrs. Bernardo. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Against? Ayes have it, 3-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. Discussion and/or vote on whether and/or in what amount the Cumberland School Department shall continue to pay Durham Bus Company during the period of disruptions related to the coronavirus pandemic. Section 1806 of the CARES Act provides that an entity which receives grant funds under the act, quote, shall to the greatest extent practicable, continue to pay its employees and contractors during the period of any disruptions or closures related to the coronavirus. Mr. Mitchell, did you want to take this one?
I think Mr. Adams is going to be able to help us with that particular item, Mr.
Adams?
Salvatore.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. So this is going to be on for the regular meeting as well, and Mr. Prignano is going to be prepared to talk about it, and not meaning to take the wind out of his sails, but from a legal perspective, the CARES Act has some aspirational aspects to it. For those LEAs that may be able to get education stabilization funds through the CARES Act, and I think that's still an unknown, frankly, but to the extent that there are funds available to LEAs nationally, not just Cumberland and not just Rhode Island, the CARES Act includes this aspiration that to the greatest extent practicable, LEAs should try to pay their vendors. And in this case, we're talking about Durham. As you all know, the contract with Durham is for actual use only. No actual use, no payment. The CARES Act says if it's practicable, and that's really more of a business manager, financial person's question than a lawyer's question. If it's practicable, then there may be some payment that can be made. If it isn't practicable, then there is no payment that can be made, or if it's somewhere in between.
I see.
So what Alex, I think, is going to talk to you about is the because he and I have spoken, sort of the lack of practicableness, if that's even a word, to paying Durham, given so many of the unknowns that you guys are facing, the cuts that needed to be made in the budget, and the layoffs, and a future that is quite uncertain. But I'll leave it to Alex for that. I'm
Yes,
not trying to
Mr.
steal
Adams.
his thunder.
Thank you. Only because I'm under a time restraint here, and I know Mr. Prignano will talk about it. Mr. Mitchell, we have this up for a vote. What is your recommendation on this situation?
Well, I think we have discussed this in the past, and I don't know that we should pay for a service that's not being provided. So
Okay,
my recommendation would be that we not pay for something that we're not being provided.
thank you. Mrs. Bernardo, Mr. DeMonica, would either of you like to make a vote? Mrs. Bernardo?
Just a quick question. So, but we
Yes.
still have a certain amount that we owe Durham, kind of like a balance. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
from deferments they've
Mr.
made,
Collins, one
they've
second.
given us in the past, where they've given us, allowed us to pay less than the services that they actually provided, and they rolled it out into future years. Yes,
So
that number is about 548,000 right now.
are we going to be making any payments towards that?
And I just to interject, Ms. Bernardo, that is an apple to an orange. The
Okay.
question of practicableness relates to services that are being provided now. That may be something to discuss.
Okay,
That is a different discussion than whether it's practicable to pay
Mr. Collins,
for
1 minute.
services that were not provided this year.
okay.
Thank you. Mr. Collins?
Thank you. So the spirit behind the CARES Act and in keeping, you know, and paying your bills is to keep the economy afloat. Does anybody know if Durham received a PPP loan? Is that
That's a good
something?
question.
Because if they were, yeah, because I mean, that's kind of double dipping. And there's been enough of that lately. So I don't
agree.
know.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Yeah.
We can check on that. Pleasure of the committee, Mrs. Bernardo, Mr. DeMonica. Looking for a motion to uphold the superintendent's recommendation that he just mentioned to not pay.
I make a motion that we approve that it was not practical to continue to pay Durham for services not rendered.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. I have a second by Mrs. Bernardo. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 3-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, CHS activity reports have been filed. There are not any public comment. Anyone public comment? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda is to adjourn. Pleasure of the committee.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Mrs.
Second.
Bernardo makes a motion, second by Mr. DeMonica. We'll call this meeting at 6:21. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the next meeting. Have a good
Thank you.
rest of your meeting.
Yep.